G'day, Bomber fans. Yeah, that was a game of footy. Just before I get into this, I'm uploading this one early because right now, as I'm speaking, Sunday morning, I am over on Dylan Alexander's YouTube channel. We're live streaming the Vic Metro and Allies Under-18s game, so head on over there if you want to hear about the 2025 draft. If you want to talk about Essendon and this loss, do that in this comment section. Don't bother us over there. Vent here because I know a lot of you will be venting. Yeah, it was a bad game of footy. Yeah, it was a really bad loss. I don't even really think it's the loss that's the bad aspect of this, and I'll talk about that. Just a bad game of footy. So let's talk about it. Quarter by quarter recap. The first was a normal quarter of footy. It was a kind of a combination of exciting and boring and stressful and good footy and poor footy. It was a weird quarter, but there were moments. Durham hit the scoreboard. Sardis and Caddy hit the scoreboard. The Tigers were sticking around. They had more of the territory. It's weird to talk about this quarter as if it was a normal game because this was the last time we would see goals kicked. It was 22-18 at quarter time. That's a normal scoreline. There were plenty of highlights. The big talking point out of the first quarter, though, is unfortunately Nick Martin being subbed out of the game with a knee issue. The early signs are unfortunately pointing towards an ACL, so that is obviously not good, but we'll wait and see what scans say. Yeah, it doesn't look good. The second quarter may have been the worst quarter of footy I've ever watched in my life. I don't even know how to describe it. Honestly, I was a bit speechless watching it. It was crazy. I've never seen footy teams, both, players collectively look so bad. It was shocking. It was really, really average footy. I was excited for this game to see, what everyone could give, but there was not a lot in that second quarter. The Tigers kicked 1 behind, we kicked 6 behinds. At halftime, it was 23-24. Prime time Saturday night footy at the G. The third quarter was a beauty. We saw a goal kicked. I'd forgotten what goals looked like until the umps gifted one to us, so thank you, umpires. Archer May nailed his first of the night and Essendon's last of the night. It was better than the second quarter. I reckon if the second quarter hadn't have occurred, we'd be talking about how bad the third quarter was, but luckily the second was there. Unfortunately for Bomber fans, it got worse from here. The fourth was, it was more of the same. We just couldn't hit the scoreboard. We had it in our forward half, but the Tigers defended really well. Quick shout out to Ben Miller, Tom Brown, countless other Richmond defenders. They were great. Unfortunately, whereas in other quarters, both teams were struggling to score. In the fourth, the Tigers managed to get 2 goals, and that's not anything to write home about, but when the opposition kicked 4 for the game, that's GG's. So in the end, the Tigers ran out winners, embarrassing the Bombers, so let's talk about this game. Alright, so rather than kind of going into detail as to how this game played out, I'm not going to do that, because this was pretty clearly just 2 really bad footy sides, and for reasons. There are pretty clear reasons why these teams are so bad. We're both really young. We're both hit by injuries. You can clearly compare the teams where they're at right now. Both, same stages of their list build, same list build, same injury list, same income. I think it was just evident how much both these, teams have to do. Just because you're young, it doesn't really give you an excuse and a reason to be bad. I'm not going to talk about Richmond because they got the win. They get let off. But Essendon, there are going to be some fans who bring out the injury and young card, but there are times where you can. And of course, we are young. We have injuries. We've got reasons to be bad. I don't think we've got reasons to be this bad. I don't think I could have imagined us being that horrific at footy. It might have been the most uninspiring game of footy I've seen Essendon play in years. I thought we showed more against Geelong in that 90-point loss than this. I left that game thinking, better things about the direction than this one. And I'm not jumping off the ship after one game. I feel like that is a natural Essendon fan response to just want to sack the coach and start again. Gold Coast lost to Richmond too, by the way, and they just beat the Pies. Teams lose to bad teams all the time. That is not what I'm worried about. I don't care that we lost to Richmond. I actually went into this game not really thinking about the win or the loss. I think both these teams are crap, but blooding players for the future to give them experience. I think we're in the exact same kind of column in terms of list build. A win or loss here in the grand scheme of things meant nothing to me, but even by the end of the third quarter, my tone doesn't change. The loss in the end doesn't change anything. I'm this frustrated if we win. I think we played a horrible brand of footy. and it's not the way I think we want to be playing. And also, I just think we there's nothing positive that Essendon fans can take from this game. You know, we've suffered horrendous injuries again. We lost to a bad team, but we also just looked horrible in doing so. Even individuals, like I think in other weeks we can look at the young players, but I think, unfortunately, and I'll talk about this, a lot of them were down. And even, you know, the good players, Archie Roberts, we know he's good. A 30 disposal Archie Roberts game doesn't really change the way I think about anything, because that's kind of the standard. I think there is nothing positive or new or fresh to take from this game. It just feels like a massive step in the wrong direction. And obviously, you know, you can take steps forward, and that's what I hope we do, but this felt like a massive step back. And just thinking about last week, right, we lose by 40. I leave feeling more positive than negative because we see growth in our ball movement and our play style. We were taking the game on, and often to our detriment. We probably could have protected the scoreboard better than we did, but that's not really what we want to do for the future. What I want to know is what the change was here, because we were not playing footy that holds up ever. I don't think there's ever been an era where the footy we were playing holds up. We were going backwards at crucial times. I don't know why in the last 3 minutes we decided to ice the clock, but we did. It was almost comical the way we were playing. I want to know what the changes we made was about. I think if we go out and lose this game, trying to take it on, throwing caution to the wind, but missing targets and missing moments and whatnot, like the last quarter last week, at least we're trying to implement a good brand of footy. As I said before, I genuinely didn't care about the win or loss that much, because I think these teams are at really similar stages of their list build. You shouldn't be thinking one's higher than the other because one's been winning more games. Like, I don't think we needed the win. What we needed was to see something. There is nothing, like I said, there's nothing positive about last night. There's nothing that makes me think anything good about what is to come. And that's not me losing faith. What I'm trying to say is, if we play like that, or try to play like that for the rest of the year or ever, nothing good will come from it. I don't know what Scott was telling the boys, but it looked so different to last week. Last week we're praising Scott for how we're playing despite the loss, so why are we changing it? Why not double down and lay the same brand? I want to see him. I haven't seen the press conference. I'm recording this right after the game, but I want to see him justify the way we played, because that wasn't a personnel thing. That was boys being coached horribly, I think. I did just say it wasn't a personnel thing, but in some parts it was. Like, I've loved guys like Loman Lowell and their efforts. I don't think he looked comfortable in the slightest. I think, VFL probably calls for him, and that's fine. Same thing happened with Day Wicks, and I'm not worried about Day Wicks. Oscar Smart probably had a debut to forget. Angus Clark, he worked really hard but didn't get much going. I thought Caddy was, obviously the service was not great, but I thought he really lowered his colours at times. I think there were maybe 5 or 6 players that played to their ability. No one was a star, but a handful or so were at their level, and then the rest were well below it. And a lot of the players that were not at their level were the kids, and that is what's unfortunate about this game, but also expected. They're not going to be at their best every week. They're not going to be at their level every week. They'll lower their colours. Lawal has really given his all the last few weeks, but we see a drop-off here. And the issue is, right, a drop-off is expected, but Lawal at his best this year has, he's still been beaten. He's been serviceable. Same with Clark, same with Sardis and the Guts. Like, at their best, they kind of break even with their opponents, and that is kind of better than what we expect from 18-year-olds. But when they're not at their level, when they're playing like they did against Richmond, they are so far off it. And the issue is, there are so many of them. And on the flip side, Richmond, you've got Sam Banks, Young, Trainer, Brown, even Hodden on debut. These guys looked better than our kids. And not because they are. I think both our builds are in fairly similar spots, and I think Richmond fans will probably agree with that. I just think on the night, our kids weren't really able to match or reach the level that their kids did. And that's fine. Like, that happens, but it's also not really fine when all of them are struggling at once. Like, if I look at the baby bombers that have been so impressive this year, I would say only Roberts really impressed me, Kako a bit as well. And it sounds harsh, like, I'm not dissing them or putting them down or anything. Like, I fully expect young players to have bad games. What I'm trying to say is, our young players all had bad games at the same time, and we're a very young team with lots of young players. So there really were a lot of floaters on the night, which is expected for players that young, but also really hurts when you've got so many of them. Now, let's get to the really soul-destroying part of this game. Yeah, so as I said, I'm recording this right after it ended. Like literally the siren sounded not long ago. I haven't seen the press conferences. I wanted an early night's sleep, but the initial fears with Nick Martin is that he's done his ACL, and that would be just catastrophic. Will Setterfield's hurt his foot. We'll talk about that a bit. So he came off. I don't think that's too bad. So that midfield now is pretty, wacky because now every zone is decimated by injury. But Nick Martin specifically, it is horrible. I honestly think he is the one player we really cannot afford to lose. Merritt's our best, but maybe Caddy and Martin, I think they're so important to our future. Martin's arguably our future captain, so to see him sidelined for, probably next year too is not good. Especially because, we'll be without our main rucks early, Martin for most of the year. We've got players who will not have a full preseason. Is 2026 going to be a write-off? That's what I'm worried about. The 2025 obviously is, are we going to have the same in 2026? And I get that, we're not going to do anything in 2026 anyway. I don't think it's an important year for us to be at our best and everything. The way I see our list, I think it's 2027, 2028 when we start coming good. But, the fact that our injury crisis is now stemming into next year, or potentially, we don't know what the result of the scans is, but yeah. And the thing is, injury crisis, yes, I think a lot of it can be blamed on the club. It's just a lot of bad luck too. Like Nick Martin plants his leg as he gets tackled and it buckles under him. That you can't do anything about that. That's nothing on the club. I didn't see the Setterfield one, but even Caldwell last week gets tackled and his foot gets trapped underneath him like a typical syndesmosis. Harry Jones and that dislocation, all those ACLs from players who've never done them previously. It is the perfect storm of, poor management and bad luck. And it's resulted in the worst injury crisis that I've ever seen, pretty much. It is bad. So yeah, it's really easy to look at this loss and just go completely glass empty, not even half empty, but empty. But we have to remember that we are really battling, and the Nick Martin injury is just the cream of the crop. It is shocking. That would have been soul-destroying for the boys, seeing him on crutches at quarter time. I know that because it was soul-destroying for me. Look, I'll excuse a lot of things. I will excuse a loss against Richmond. As I've said, I really don't think the win or loss was that important. But what I won't excuse is the way we played. It's just, that is not a brand of footy that I think is anywhere close to sustainable. That is not the way I want my team to be playing, ever. And I get that it's a game against Richmond. Like, these are two very bad teams. That doesn't matter to me. I don't want to see Essendon play like this ever again. Every team has a bad game in every season. Every team loses against teams that they shouldn't lose against. But yeah, this was just, for me, it's more about the way we played. It was inexcusable. I really don't understand what the directive was. I don't understand, why certain players were so poor, why we were so lackluster and defensive, why we were so boring. It gave me no reason to be any more optimistic about the future. Nothing good came from this game. There are no positives at all. Nothing but negatives. We've got more injuries. We've got players low on form. We've got, boring play style. For the rest of the season, I just want to see, us play the style of footy that we will play in the future, even if it goes horribly wrong, even if we lose by 100 points against the Giants. At least we're taking the game on. I'll be happier than us, to go out and lose 30-40 again. But yeah, just a really bad game of footy. A really bad night. Bad Saturday night. I think we do need to remember how topsy-turvy the sport is. I know plenty of you will be commenting about burning memberships and calling for Scott's head and whatnot, wanting certain players dropped. I don't see it like that. I think for the most part we've managed this crisis well enough by blooding prospects for the future. I think this game was as bad as we've looked all year, and that is a shame because up until this point we've played okay footy in patches. So yeah, we really need to see more in the next few weeks because that was just nowhere near good enough, and I don't even care if we're bad. It's the way we played. We can be nowhere near good enough, but if we're nowhere near good enough playing like that, I'm unhappy. Votes, it's a tough week for it. I'm going to give 1 vote to Xavier Dersma. I thought he gave a crap. He was, running up and back. I gave 2 votes to Archie Roberts, who also gave a crap. I really liked some of his efforts early and late. He bookended pretty well. And 3 votes to Jordan Ridley. I think of all the Essendon players, he looked like a football player, and that is a massive compliment in this game because there weren't many players out there for both teams who looked like they knew how to play footy. Role player Isaac Kako, I thought he injected some life into the game at times, but yeah, that is that. video done. Go watch Dylan Alexander's stream. Let's forget about this game and think happier thoughts. Cheers for watching, Bomber fans. Like, subscribe, and go Bombers.